Today's lesson is Let It Burn, the truth about wildfires. Hi, everybody. My name is Roger.
And I'm Helen.
And today we're going to continue talking about the truth of wildfires, the truth about wildfires. And they seem to be in the news all the time, especially in the summer. And we did talk about a couple of examples of wildfires last summer, the wildfires in Canada and the wildfires in Hawaii. And, of course, if you pay attention to the news, you'll find out that wildfires are pretty much burning all the time all over the world.
Yes, and we get a lot of news reports about wildfires around the world. And sometimes these reports make things out to be a lot worse or a lot stronger than they actually are. For instance, we saw that wildfires these days don't actually burn more land or larger areas than they did before.
And as you know, trees grow back and fires aren't burning everywhere. Sometimes when I hear about wildfires, I wonder, gee, how much is left? How long is it going to be before those wildfires burn everything on the earth and we're just left with one big desert? But, of course, forests regenerate themselves, and it's probably not really a big concern, but we are concerned about the damage they cause and the lives that are lost as a result of those wildfires. But last time, of course, we talked about some advantages to wildfires. They can actually help clear out growth in forests so sunshine or sunlight can reach the plants on the ground. And then we also mentioned the fact that some trees cannot produce seeds without hot fires to open up those pine cones, say, for example, with the sequoias. And then some species of beetles actually mate in the embers of a fire that has just been put out. Okay, so let's find out some more about wildfires and why they're good. Let's listen to the first part of today's lesson, and we'll be right back.
Many people believe that by regularly logging forests to make them less dense, we can prevent fires from spreading. Nevertheless, the opposite seems to be true, as logging leaves lots of dead plant material behind that creates a super fuel for fires. In fact, evidence suggests that it's better to avoid logging and other forms of forest management, since the fires that occur in non-managed forests naturally consume smaller branches and trees that would otherwise serve as fuel for more intense fires.
So now we're going to look at some ways to reduce wildfires or what to do when there is a wildfire near you. Now, many people believe that by regularly logging forests to make them less dense, we can prevent fires from spreading. Indeed, that's what I also heard, that if you want to prevent the spread of a wildfire, then you should make the forests less dense by cutting off the tree branches and getting rid of the leaves so that there are fewer things to burn. When you log a forest, you're basically cutting trees in the forest down. And the goal of logging forests is to make the forest less dense. When something is dense, it contains a lot of things that are placed close to each other. So a dense forest could mean a forest that has a lot of trees and bushes and leaves so that when you're walking through it, you feel like there are so many things all around you.
Right, so dense just means things are close together and there's a lot of stuff in a small space. You got to be careful driving in the mountains sometimes because there can be dense fog there. It's difficult to see for long distances ahead of your car, so please drive careful in dense fog, or if there's a fire, you could have dense smoke. In this particular case, we're talking about fewer trees in the forest, and so the forest will be less dense. And as a result, we can prevent fires from spreading, or at least that's what a lot of people believe. Nevertheless, even though this might be true, the opposite seems to be true. So even though lots of people believe this, still the opposite seems to be true, as logging leaves lots of dead plant material behind that creates a super fuel for fires. So it seems the opposite is true. If you log a forest or try to remove some trees from a forest, in order to prevent the spread of fires, it leaves a lot of dead plant material behind. So here we've got the phrase to leave behind. That means something does not come with you when you go away. For example, maybe you may have escaped a country that had a civil war or something, and you left your family behind because you couldn't take them with you.
Yes, and we also have the word nevertheless that begins the sentence. And nevertheless means in spite of something that you just mentioned. So before, in the previous sentence, it was mentioned that some people believe that logging forests to make them less dense can prevent fires from spreading. Nevertheless, in spite of the fact of what was just mentioned, the opposite seems to be true. In other words, logging forests is actually not good to prevent forest fires because it results in a lot of dead plant material that's left behind, and this dead plant material can be used to make the fire stronger because fires have things to burn with these dead plant material.
If plants are dead, of course, they're nice and dry and they can burn easily. So that's some great fuel for those fires and they can spread much faster. In fact, evidence suggests that it's better to avoid logging and other forms of forest management since the fires that occur in non-managed forests naturally consume smaller branches and trees that would otherwise serve as fuel for more intense fires. Whew, that is a very long sentence, so let's break it down for you. We're going to say that we have evidence that suggests or tells us that it's better to avoid logging and other forms of forest management. So that's what forest rangers do. They manage forests, they control the amount of trees growing, but of course sometimes you just want nature to run its course. Every time people get involved with things, they tend to screw these things up. So that's basically what this sentence is saying. We should avoid logging and we should avoid other forms of forest management since or because the fires that happen in those non-managed forests naturally consume smaller branches and trees. And those smaller branches and trees would otherwise serve as fuel for more intense fires.
Right. So, in other words, forests that are not managed or that aren't touched by humans, that aren't trimmed or logged, have a better chance of holding off wildfires or large fires because these fires can consume the smaller branches and trees that would not be there in forests that have been logged or hyper-managed by humans.
Right. So, of course, nature would actually burn or consume those smaller branches and trees. And so if you just stay away and let nature take care of itself, then you won't have that fuel for more intense fires. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Let's find out some more in the second part.
People might also think that when a wildfire comes blazing towards their home, the only thing they can do is flee immediately. However, there are ways that they can save their property as well. These include removing any flammable material within 9 meters of it and regularly trimming nearby trees to keep their canopies from growing too closely together.
大家好，第二部分我们来介绍动词 blaze， 它的意思是熊熊燃烧或是闪耀。例如 Flames blazed through the abandoned factory， 火焰在那座废弃工厂熊熊燃烧。或者As the midday sun blazed overhead, we regretted not bringing more water. 正午的太阳在头顶上闪耀，我们后悔没有多带点水。另外，这个字也可以当作名词，它指的是烈火或是火焰、火势。举例来说 After several hours, firefighters finally brought the blaze under control. 经过几个小时的努力，消防队员终于控制住了火势。下一个我们看到形容词 flammable，意思是易燃的或是可燃的。例如 Be careful of this mixture, it is highly flammable. 小心这种混合物极为易燃。接下来我们看到动词 trim， 指的是修剪树枝或是头发，也可以是削减的意思。举例来说 Frank trimmed the hedges in the garden. Frank 修剪了花园里的树篱笆。再举一个例子 The company trimmed costs from its budget. 该公司削减了预算。
People might also think that when a wildfire comes blazing towards their home, the only thing they can do is flee immediately. So here we are setting up another situation where people believe a certain thing, but what they believe may not be the case. And that belief is that when a wildfire comes blazing towards people's home, so you're at home and you see a wildfire burning and coming towards you. Here we have the word blazing. To blaze basically means to burn strongly and to burn brightly. So when we have a wildfire burning strongly and brightly, very close to your house and it's coming towards your house, then a lot of people think that the only thing they can do is flee immediately. When you flee, you run away to escape something. For instance, a lot of people flee their homes when they see a burglar inside their homes, or they may flee their country because their country is in war. So you're escaping danger when you flee. And of course, a lot of people, when they see a forest fire, a wildfire blazing towards them, the first thing that comes to mind is that they should flee the danger.
Right, so here blaze is being used as a verb. It just means a fire is burning toward them. Blaze can also be a noun. It can just mean a big fire. So I could say the firemen fought the blaze bravely. And in this particular case, though, the fire is blazing toward their homes, and so they can flee. That's what they think about doing. Let's get out of here. However, there are ways that they can save their property as well. So yes, sometimes you know you're in big trouble and you should run away, and that makes sense. But you could protect your property in other ways. And these, of course, are things to do ahead of time. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, we could say. And these include removing any flammable material within 9 meters of it and regularly trimming nearby trees to keep their canopies from growing too closely together. So these are some preventative measures that you can take to lessen the damage that your house may suffer as a result of a wildfire blazing toward your home. So first of all, you can remove any flammable material within 9 meters of your property or of your home. If something's flammable, it can burn. So dried branches, dried leaves are very flammable, as are pieces of wood.
Right. So flammable things are things that can burn easily, and you want to remove those within 9 meters of a fire. And also you want to trim nearby trees regularly. When you trim something, you cut that thing in order to make it neater, in order to make it not spread out so much. So you can also get a trim when you want to cut your hair, but you don't want to cut it a lot so that you have short hair. But you just want to make your hair look neater or straighter, or to give it all one length when you trim your hair. You can also trim the hedges, the bushes. That's when you want to make the hedges look neater. And in this case, you can trim nearby trees to keep their canopies from growing too closely together. So a canopy, as we normally would use the word, refers to a coverage. So you might want to sit under a canopy when it's really sunny outside so that you don't have the rays of the sun burning your head. So that's just a piece of cloth that's over you to cover the sun. But a canopy can also refer to the leaves and branches of trees that make up kind of like a roof or coverage in the forest. And when trees are not trimmed and they grow wildly, the canopy can become very thick. And when the canopy becomes thick, it can be used as fuel for fires to burn.
Yeah, but canopy in a forest, of course, is when the trees just kind of come together at the tops there and they block out the sun. So, yes, indeed, we want to have those canopies not grow so closely together so that sunlight can reach the ground, and therefore you should trim the nearby trees, and you don't want those canopies to grow too closely together. In this case, if the canopies grow too close together, it's much easier for the fires to spread. Okay, that brings us to the end of the second part of our lesson. Let's wrap things up now with the third and final part.
There's an old proverb that says, "Fire is never a gentle master." Although fire is absolutely not gentle or kind, that doesn't mean it's always bad. Wildfires are a part of life, and the best thing we can do to make sure of our safety is to educate ourselves about them.
第三部分我们看到单字 proverb， 它是名词，指的是谚语、俗语或是格言。例如 To help the students learn English, the teacher teaches them one proverb every day. 为了帮助学生学习英文，那位老师每天教学生一句谚语。或者 The Chinese language contains many proverbs. 在中文里有许多谚语。接下来我们看到副词 absolutely， 指的是完全的、绝对的、确实或是极其。举例来说 I am absolutely sure that my sister will like this present. 我完全确定我妹妹会喜欢这个礼物。再举一个例子 Please be absolutely sure that you can afford that car before you buy it. 在购买之前，请绝对确定你有能力负担得起那辆车。最后去掉这个字的字尾 ly 就会变成形容词 absolute。例如 Maggie's authority in the company is absolute. Maggie 在公司里的权力是毋庸置疑的。又或者说 The dictator wields absolute control over the country. 那名独裁者对该国家行使绝对控制权。
There's an old proverb that says, fire is never a gentle master. So here we're ending our discussion on fires and forest fires, and we're generalizing the discussion with a proverb. A proverb is a short statement, usually one that's well known, that gives advice or expresses a wise idea or something that's generally true. So here, the proverb that we're discussing is, fire is never a gentle master. In other words, fire burns and it's often very intense and very strong, and it can be very destructive, and it's never gentle.
But so proverbs are popular sayings that people use to convey some kind of advice or some kind of truth. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. The early bird gets the worm. Those are some examples of proverbs. This particular proverb says, fire is never a gentle master. In other words, fires are always intense. You got to be careful. You don't want to mess with fires because they can destroy you, so don't underestimate fires. Although fire is absolutely not gentle or kind, that doesn't mean it's always bad. So, yes, we oftentimes think of fire as being a bad thing. It destroys things, it kills people. But as we've been learning in our lesson, there are some good uses for fire. Small fires, of course, can help us cook food and keep us warm in winter, but big fires in forests have benefits as well.
Right. Fire is absolutely not gentle. Here, the word absolutely simply means definitely or completely. It's used to emphasize an idea, and the idea that's being emphasized is that fire is definitely, absolutely not gentle or kind, but it's not all bad either. Wildfires are a part of life, and the best thing we can do to make sure of our safety is to educate ourselves about them. So we saw that wildfires, even though we usually see them as a force of destruction, it kills things in its path, it can also be something that renews things, that makes things grow. And the best thing that we can do to protect ourselves and our environment from the destructive aspect of wildfires is to know as much about them as possible, to educate ourselves about them.
Absolutely. And of course, we want everybody to stay nice and safe out there, and we don't want you to have any destruction to your property. But we also need to remember that fires can be beneficial. They're not so bad after all. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation. Let's turn things over now to Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第二部分的第一句写道 人们可能也认为，当野火朝他们的家蔓延时，他们唯一能做的就是立刻逃离。好，文中是用 The only thing they can do is flee immediately 去表达说他们唯一能做的就是立刻逃离。那么这里的 they can do 前方是省略了关系代名词 that， 那这个部分是形容词子句。可是为什么我们说 the only thing they can do is flee immediately， 为什么 be 动词 is 后面是直接接原形动词 flee 呢？我们就来学习这个用法哦。当我们看到这样的句型 The only thing that somebody can do is to 加原形动词，这是表达说某人唯一能做的事就是点点点。那么 the only thing 是先行词，后面接这个形容词子句 that somebody can do 来修饰它，那么 that 可以省略。而在这个句型当中 the only thing 是主词，那么 is 是动词，之后再接不定词 to be 来当主词补语。只是要特别注意，当形容词子句当中的动词含有 do， 而且呢我们的主词补语是不定词 to be 的话，主词补语通常就会用原形动词。以课文的例子来说 The only thing they can do， 这里的形容词子句 they can do 前方我们不是省略了 that 吗？然后这个子句里面又含有了动词 do， 所以它后面的 be 动词 is 之后就是直接接原形动词 is flee immediately， 而不是说 is to flee immediately。 好，如果说这个形容词子句里面的 do 后面还有接其他修饰语的话，则可以保留 to， 让语义更为清楚。就像我们课文最后一句它有写到 The best thing we can do to make sure of our safety is to educate ourselves about them。 这里的 be 动词 is 后面则是接不定词 to educate， 就是像这样的用法。我们再补充几个类似的句型，像 All that somebody need to do is 点点点，就是某人唯一需要做的事就是什么。 All that somebody want to do is 点点点，某人唯一想做的事就是什么什么。 The first thing that somebody do is 点点点，则是表达某人做的第一件事就是什么什么。在这些句型当中呢 that 是可以省略的，然后它们的形容词子句是有包含动词 do， 所以我们的 is 点点点这个 is 后方呢就会接原形动词来当补语咯。举例来说 The first thing I do in the morning is drink a glass of water。 我早上做的第一件事就是喝一杯水。好，那如果形容词子句里面动词不包含 do 的话，像 All that somebody need is 点点点 All that somebody want is 点点点，去表达说某人唯一需要的是什么，某人唯一想要的是什么。这时候这个 is 后面可以接不定词片语，或者是可以接名词来当补语。我们来看两个例句。 All I need is your trust， 我只需要你的信任。这时候 your trust 这边是用名词当补语。 All you need is to believe in yourself， 你只需要相信你自己。那这时候我们是用 to believe in yourself 来当补语。好，那以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天的单字吧。
Dense. The forest was so dense that it was difficult to see more than a few feet ahead. Nevertheless, after hours of walking, Glenn felt like he could barely take another step. Nevertheless, he pushed himself to finish the hike. Flee.
The villagers fled as the flood continued to rise, seeking safety on higher ground.
Trim. Victor asked Krista to trim his hair before the party. Absolutely. It was clear that Sheila was absolutely joyful about her surprise birthday party.
Discussion starter starts now.
Here's our discussion starter for today, and the question is, can you think of a way that people might reduce the number of wildfires that occur? How would that help?
Well, I think one way to decrease the number of wildfires would be to try to do something about climate change, because if we can stop Earth's temperatures from rising constantly, that would help fires to not burn so intensely.
Well, to reduce the number of wildfires, it would help for people to not build so many campfires when they go camping or when they have picnics outside, because even though we think we've put out the fire, it might still be burning, and all it takes is a little breeze to start a big fire raging across thousands of acres of forests.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoy reading along with us. I am Helen.
I am Roger.
See you next time.